Library. My name is Herbert Malveaux, and I'm the manager of the library. And I want to welcome you and thank you very much for joining us at the presentation of Don't Mute Mo, Vision of an Urban Scholar Turning Words into Action. Now, we're here with activist Ronald Moten and co-author Jeffrey Anderson. We also want this afternoon to acknowledge the Attorney General's presence, Brian Schwab. And we want to hear from the Councilman Mark Fruman.
Thank you very much. And I want to welcome everybody here today for this discussion and presentation. I yesterday was at a community meeting in Anacostia, a hearing that was held by Councilmember Brooke Pinto to hear from people in the community about the issues that they faced and what were the possible solutions to them. And it was a very, very powerful day of testimony. And folks in Anacostia are grappling with how do we solve the issues of youth and gun violence and crime in our city, and how do we address root causes? How do we make real change? And it was very, very healthy to have that conversation in Anacostia. It is really important to have that conversation here in Ward 3 as well. So I'm so glad that folks have come out. I got to say, you know, I've known Ron Moten for a dozen years, 15 years. And the thing that's so striking about Don't Mute Mo is one of the things that I will always do is go to the Turkey Bowl. I love going to the Turkey Bowl. If you haven't been, it's the high school championship football game at Eastern High School on Thanksgiving Day. And the thing that is so striking, one of the things that's so striking to me there at the Turkey Bowl, and Ron, we see each other every year, and all of the kids who walk up to Ron, kids who could be at risk, who look to Ron and have trust in Ron, and who he's been able to reach over the years, it's incredibly important work. And I'm so glad that you're here in Cleveland Park and going to let people know more about that work, and we can all together think about how we're going to make a positive difference on these issues going forward. So thank you very much, Ron. Thank you, Jeffrey, the district's muckraker, and thank you so much, Mr. King, for coming out and being a facilitator for this discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt.
Thank you. I'm also pleased to be here, and I'm pleased to be in a library. I can remember the first time I entered a library. I can give you even the date I entered the library, public library. It was September 28, 1949, before most of you were even born. But I remember getting on the streetcar at Stevens School over in Foggy Bottom and going over to the Central Library at 7th Street near Mount Vernon Square. And I got there a passport. It was called a library card. And that passport took me beyond my neighborhood, took me to the other side of town, took me across the city, took me across the country, took me across the world. A passport, a library. Library is where you get the information. It comes to you in different ways now, not just books, microfilms, or things like that. It comes through forms like this, and the library makes it possible. This is where the information is gathered and shared. So do me a favor. If you don't have a library card, get a library card before you leave here. If you don't have a chance to do it today, come back and get a library card. You have to have a library card in your pocket. It's just like an ID card. That's your passport. Sorry I had to get on the soapbox about that, but I feel very strongly about it. Now, just a word about the book and the authors, and I'm not going to take a lot of time about this. I mean, I've known Ron for a long time. I know his journey on the streets, through the streets, on to jail, out of jail, through school, back here as a pioneer, working. We all missteps, Missteps, everybody makes missteps, but he kept getting up, keeps getting up, and he's gone from what he was to what he is now, which is a keen observer of what's going on in this city, with even ideas of how to deal with it. So I'm glad to be here with him and to talk about this book, Don't Mute Mo, and the ideas that come from it. But I'm also glad to be here to do this with Jeffrey Anderson. You may not know Jeff Anderson the way I do, the way some people do, but you ought to know him. You ought to know him. He's an investigative reporter. But the difference between Jeff Anderson and some of the other reports you read in the newspapers and magazines, Jeff flies without a net. Doesn't have a bank of editors, doesn't have a newspaper publication behind him, doesn't have a bank of lawyers. And I know you need lawyers, I've been sued. You need lawyers in this business. But Jeff tells it. He puts it out there. The best thing that helps Jeff is that hurts Jeff is he doesn't have that lawyer, those bank of lawyers. He doesn't have that platform. And the people out there who know this are so happy that he doesn't have it. Jeff is like that part of the cavalry. He's down there fighting in the valley. Then you have that other part of the cavalry, the raiders with the editors behind them. They are the ones who ride down from the hills when the battle is over, and they shoot the wounded. Jeff is out there stirring it up. And so I'm pleased, honored to be here with a colleague who does it without a net at all. And that brings me to the book itself, Don't Mute Mo, which is a really journey into the world, into the streets, to the kids, to the families, to communities, a journey into people who have gone astray. It's a close-up at the look of the people who walk in, live in, play in, rob, steal, die in our streets. We discover that those things happen not on one street, not one neighbor, but across our city. I want to get to something that came my way a couple of days ago. It read to me. Around 3 a.m., I was going to Subway in Cleveland Park for a sandwich, and I walked right into a robbery. As I walked in, I see a man behind the register forcing the worker to open the cash register and screaming at her. He looked at me and he told me to get away. And obviously, you don't have to tell me twice. I immediately left. After I was a block away, I called 911. I hope the Subway worker is okay. Just want to let everybody know what's going on. Let everybody know what's going on. Let everybody know what's going on. That Subway is just a few blocks north, near Van Ness. And that's not an isolated story. It's not a once-in-a-lifetime event. Didn't make the news. Robberies like that are a daily occurrence. No one got shot. There was no blood. No one got hauled off in an ambulance or hauled off to jail. But there were losses. Losses not only at Subway, but losses to that worker. Losses to that individual who witnessed it. Losses to the people outside who realized somebody had done such a brazen act right in their midst, in their neighborhood where they live. So I want to stop and just ask one simple question to Jeff and to Mo. What in the hell is going on? And why? Take a shot at it, Mo.
So I'll say this, it's a lot going on. It's a lot of good things going on in our city as well, but the bad things that are going on that affect our young people, the quality of living, the quality of life, equity, opportunity, education. A lot of these different things have led to what we see. We can go back to 2008 to 2012 in Washington, D.C., when crime went down for 4 consecutive years. But to get to that, it took years of work. It didn't happen overnight. I tell a lot of the young people doing the work, most of them don't know that Ron Moulton came home from prison and worked for 9 years before he got a dime. Before he got a dime, right? Before he got a dime. He worked for 9 years for free. And some people don't value that because they come home and they walk right into a job and don't know that people paved the way, that people had to get lawyers to fight for them to have those opportunities. So there was a lot of work done by police, community, organizations, churches, right? That came together weekly to deal with issues. They came together weekly to create programs after school for children. And this happened for years. And then we had 4 straight years of crime decreasing in D.C. After that, as most politicians do, you start seeing success. All they talk about is the success, and they don't continue to do what got us there, right? For almost 10 straight years in D.C., you had no funding, education, a lot more and more children got disengaged, especially after COVID. So right now, if you go in Washington, D.C., if you go to Kramer or other schools in Ward 8, 40% of the children are not going to school every day. So we have 40% of children in Anacostia, in the biggest middle school that we have, not going to school. Could you imagine what they might be doing during the daytime? If they don't have the right guidance at home, if they need to put food on the table, if they're the 13-year-old who's the man of the house. You get what I'm saying? If that's going on in a lot of these households, right? And then the other thing is, I was one of the people who fought for years for criminal justice reform, to get rid of mass incarceration. And it was badly needed. But what happens in our country, right, not just in D.C., but throughout the country, we're extremists. We go from one extreme, mandatory minimums, to the other extremes, where we just let people go without ensuring that they have an opportunity to be successful.
And you know what, Dr. Dumont? I'm going to leave people hanging at that point because we're going to come back to that. And we're going to get over there to Jeff and see, from where you sit, Jeff, what do you think is going on?
Well, the funny thing about journalists is, you know, we like to make noise. We like to raise hell. Some of us do, and raise a lot of questions. But we like to say we're also not in the answer business. So I don't really want to be seen as providing the answer. People like Colby have a platform that they can use to do that. I go back to my reporting and I think about what's going on these days. And I hate to put it on the youth because I think the youth is the future, not just in the city, but in our country. In fact, I heard somebody give a very eloquent statement yesterday. I watched it on some YouTube thing. And he made the point that this is the future in the country for all the things that are happening, that the youth has to step up and that they have to force the change. So I go back to my early reporting on two departments to try to answer your question. One, the schools. In 2012, the chancellor of the schools announced that she was going to reduce the 40th lowest performing, she was going to reduce the deficit in at-risk scores for the lowest 40 schools by 40%. And I read that in 2014 and I said, no, you're not. And by 2016, it hadn't happened then either because they didn't put the resources into it. They moved the resources into the central office. And then the scores became the game. So by 2016, I wrote about it, and that's 6 years ago. They're still having the same problem, at-risk funding. So I come back to disparity, inequity and disparity in education. They didn't do it. That's not saying it's an easy thing to do, and I don't have the answer. But what they did was started aggregating scores around test season to tell you all that, we're improving, we're improving. Well, some parts of town we are, but the place that needed it the most, we're not. So I believe that if you don't have a solid school system, you're going to have problems with the youth. And the youth are, frankly, in the news. That's what a lot of people are here to talk about, I think, and hear about how to get control of this population of people who are hurting and have not had the upbringing they need to move into a safer, more productive role in their young lives. The second thing is the Department of Youth and Rehabilitation Services. Colby and I both covered that very closely a number of years ago. And when I first started covering it, there was 1,000 committed youth. That's the wards of the city. They could not be incarcerated as adults. They had committed serious crimes, but they had nowhere to put them. They had a 60-bed facility out in Laurel. They had a youth services center, which they would warehouse people there. They're supposed to not be there unless they're, pending trial. And they would scatter them around the country to full-blown youth detention facilities, or they'd put them back into the neighborhood with an ankle bracelet or maybe some sort of monitored home setting. Well, I was shocked to learn, because there was a period of time that DYRS was not in the news anymore, and maybe it was a bad idea to assume that good things were happening there. I was shocked to learn recently that there was only 100 youth that are wards of the city. That's 100 youth out of all the things that are going on and all the crimes that are charged and all the convictions and all the, the juvenile system. And again, I don't have the answers for how to fix that system, but the fact is that only 100 children in this city are under the supervision of the Department of Youth Rehabilitation Services. So when you say what's going on, I say they are, that somebody needs to get to the bottom of that and figure out why only 100 people. Because note the word rehabilitation. This isn't for, for them to be punished. You got to be accountable for crimes, but rehabilitation is the name of the game in that department. And I don't see any evidence right now, and I'm going to be reporting on it, and I'm sure Colby will be looking into it too, because we tend to gravitate to some of the same subjects. So I would say those two things, is that our institutional systems are failing the children of DC right now.
Yeah, thank you very much. I will be getting back to that subject in the next few days, because there is the rest of the story about that. But I'm going to stay with this business of what you mentioned, Mo, and what you also mentioned, Jeff, about numbers. There's a lot of game playing with numbers, massaging of data numbers. And you wrote, Jeff, to the reporter's eye, such reporting belies a stunning lack of sensitivity to how violence affects the collective psyche of a community that suffers by it. Community that suffers by violence. What does that mean to you, Mo?
So it means a
And
lot.
how does it come out in real terms that you see and that need to be dealt with?
So the effect that violence has on our community is devastating. People who live in Cleveland Park, I can imagine how you feel right now. Because when you come outside and you fear coming out, that's not a good feeling. But just imagine if you were in Anacostia, where you have young people afraid to go to middle school because other 15-year-olds, this is facts, are pulling out guns on other 15-year-olds trying to go to school. Just imagine if you had to go through that as a child, right? Just imagine if when COVID came, right? Now a household that you don't want to be in, you had to be in there all day for 2 years, and you have no escape, no matter how bad that household was. Just imagine the children who go to Stanton Elementary, who saw at least 5 of their friends, this is elementary school, killed in a 6-year period. It might have been more, but I'm gonna say 5 in a 3-year period. And most of them never got mental health services, never dealt with the trauma. So what we see in our community is a lot of people become numb and used to violence, which makes it very easy to inflict it upon other people. And then we see a sense of hopelessness in our community because a lot of people are being pushed out, A lot of people see that. A lot of people go to programs and things that say they're helping people. They don't get help. I mean, I had a young lady call me today who is homeless. You know, I get calls every day dealing with different type of issues in our city. So a lot of people would go through this trauma, they've given up, and they just don't see the opportunities. And then the other thing I'll say, DC is very resourceful, Kobe, and they have a lot of programs. Some of them are good and some of them are bad, but a lot of people don't know how to access the good programs. Like, I could tell you a lot of things, like the HPAP program. One of my young people who was in check at the game bought a house a year and a half ago using the HPAP program, $450,000.
Would you explain Checking the Games, what that
Right.
program is?
So Check It was a gay gang that was in downtown Gallery Place. Steve Buscemi did a film on them. One of the leaders was in DC jail. The sister got shot by an AK-47. I was there visiting with Chief Diane Grooms, and Star called while I was there, the leader, asked why I don't ever help the gay children. So when Star came home, I said, I help anybody as long as they want to help themselves. Star came home, I started helping Star. To this day, I still work with Star and one of the leaders of Check It, and we're business partners. Now, to work with Check It, I didn't get a dime to do that, not a dime. I worked for years without getting any resources, and I broke up a gang. The sad thing about Check It is just like everything else you see in this city. Even though I was able to get the core leaders, it was 200 members of Check It. So you had all these children here who had been traumatized. A lot of them had been raped as children. Their parents had given up on them because they were gay. I can go on and on and on. The DC public schools put them out because at that time, this wasn't a gay-friendly city. We're going back 12 years. So if it was an issue with them, they would get put out and not the situation dealt with. So they took to the streets, started a gang, and they terrorized Gallery Place. And the city spent $1 million a year on a police detail for them, and I broke that up with no city funding. And later on, two of the leaders have a business with us, and we doing great things at Anacostia, and we've helped a lot of people through that and gave a lot of people motivation to do the same thing. Just like Peace of Harless, who a lot of people talk about, bad about, the work that we did inspired others to do a lot of great work. In fact, if you go and look at all the great people who are successful in doing work in DC, at least 80% of them either were a youth from my program or they worked for me and I trained them. So, you know, I don't have to prove myself to nobody. You know what I'm saying? To nobody. And if somebody don't understand that, they on another planet.
Well, let's stay on this planet for a minute. Jeff, you wrote, and I'm going to come to this because it says a lot about what we're talking about. You said, numbers don't tell the whole story. Numbers don't tell the whole story. The U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development came in, took a look at our DCHA, DC Housing Authority, and ripped it apart. Ripped it apart. The long waiting list, the dilapidated housing. You and Mo have seen those people who are waiting in line. Waiting in line for something that's beyond their reach. You know something also about the people who get money from the city to build that housing, to renovate those repairs. You come up behind on the people who are paid to run those programs. Step back and tell us, what's behind those numbers? What's behind making people line up for vouchers that are not there? What's behind putting people in houses that they wouldn't go in their damn selves? What's behind those numbers?
So leave it to Colby to pick out the one of the few times in which I actually assert my own voice in this book. Mostly my voice is lending voice to Ron's writings, but thank you for that. I want to point out one observation that I also just learned just yesterday, and it was stunning to me. We all heard about that tragic stabbing at Petworth Library. We will be appearing there next Sunday, doing another similar forum like this, Saturday, I believe. I learned that the decedent actually had a housing voucher, and that he had received that voucher in July. So, as an object lesson, that tells me that we got to be questioning that lag time. What's the value of standing out in the cold out of MLK Junior Library for a voucher when you're going to be put back out on the street for 7 months or more? People have been waiting 10 or 15 years. So when it comes to a federally funded program, it's a blessing and a curse. Because federally funded programs, they actually do have rules, you know, then you're supposed to follow them. In DC, we like to make up our own rules in a lot of ways. But federal programs, HUD has very serious metrics. That's the good news, because HUD was able to come in and prove to the city that we have a crisis in public housing. The bad news is that HUD is now going to also evaluate our progress based on what the numbers are that we can show in all these statistical categories. So then when you have a situation where you can reduce numbers off a waiting list, and if any of you watched the hearing at the Department of Housing, or at the Housing Committee last week, we heard a lot about that. We heard a lot of really nice things from the director about all the things they're doing. And they're quantifiable in some sort of fashion or form. But how much do they reflect the real situation? That is the challenge. And it's probably the challenge for journalists like myself, but it's a challenge for elected officials who have to oversee these departments, how to get behind those numbers and get to what's actually happening. And I've asked the director this weekend, how many of the people that you gave a voucher to at MLK Junior Library a month ago, how many of them have been housed? And when can they be expected to be housed? And what's the average length of time once you get a voucher to when you are actually housed? Because at that point, that number means nothing until somebody's got a roof over their head. And I don't need to tell anybody that a roof over your head is the first step for anything. If you come home from prison, the first thing you need is a roof over your head. Can't do anything else without that. So I think that is at the core of our crisis. And to bring it back to the violence for a minute, the children that are hurting in this town are coming from those communities where those housing projects are in crisis. So it's all woven together and it's cyclical. So the longer we drag our feet politically and try to play numbers games and get the federal government off our back, the longer we perpetuate a problem that's creating other problems that are just horrible. It's one horror on top of another.
And you know, on your point about what happened at the Petworth Library, because I know that's one of the libraries I attend, and the consequences of not giving him a voucher. He was in the Petworth Library, and he had a beef with another person who was homeless,
Right.
who didn't get a voucher. And he said, well, you gave some drugs to my friend, and he OD'd. The other one said, well, I didn't, and you tore down the tent that my friend was living in, and he was mad, and he stabbed him to death. Suppose he had that. Suppose he had that housing. He was off the streets and was getting the services he needed. Suppose he had that housing. There are consequences to these things. There are consequences.
Colby,
I'm gonna
could I circle
I
back?
want to say something too.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead, Mo, you go ahead.
I want to say one thing about this is complicated, and I got several views. One, I think everybody who's willing to get up off their butt and work hard every day should have the right to live in D.C. Right? Anybody who's willing to get up and try should be able to afford to live in Washington, D.C., and that's not an easy recipe. Example, to build a one unit in affordable housing in Ward 3 costs us $1 million per unit. I'm gonna say that again. Most people don't know this. To build one unit of affordable housing in Ward 3 costs $1 million per unit. That means if you have 40 units, that's $40 million per unit. I mean, for that building. If you go to Ward 7, it's $400,000 per unit to build a unit. See, most people don't understand the whole thing about development. So, you know, we might want to put more money from bike lanes into developing affordable housing. I'm just saying, because that's what it's going to cost. I'm just being honest with you. We're going to have to figure this out. The other thing is, with me with housing, a lot of the programs that are supposed to be set up to work, we just throwing money down the drain. What do I mean by that? Rapid housing does not work. If we did a study to see how many people went through rapid housing and end up in permanent housing, I guarantee you it's below 20%. I have a young lady in here right now today who called me this morning, like I said, because she's homeless and she went to Virginia Williams program. Her family selling the house, she had to get out. She's a hardworking mother trying to raise her son who's been getting in a little trouble in the streets. Like, she's going through it. But she did everything that she can do to try to do the right thing. And 9 times out of 10, she's going to be either sleeping in her car or end up being homeless on the streets of D.C. And she's a good person, right? She's not lazy. She wants to do what's right. She came through my program. We've been helping her, right? But I'm not equipped to do that. That's not what I get funding for. So what I'm saying is, we have all these type of situations where the rapid housing, I know people who've been in this city for 14 years. And whether it's their fault or not, they go to rapid housing, leave, go back to the homeless shelter when their time is up, come back to rapid housing, go back to the homeless shelter, come back to rapid housing. So you're talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars that didn't accomplish nothing. So my thing is, the way we deal with it is empowering people, right? Empowering people, teaching people, like I just learned over the real last 5 years, the importance of credit, teaching them financial literacy, teaching them how to make it, and then giving them an opportunity to really exist in D.C. And that needs to be the conversation that we have. How do we get people where they don't even necessarily need a voucher? Or, I'm going to close with this, how do we do what Trey did from Check It? His mother left him a voucher, and I told him, it's a transgender woman, that you're not going to be on welfare for the rest of your life. Took that voucher, got in the HUD program, which got $20,000 from that because they match you dollar for dollar what you pay the rent, got in the ACE-PAC program, walked in a house in Ward 7 with $100,000 worth of equity. And that's what I want to help do. I don't want people depending on the government forever. The government should be there to lift you up, right? But not hold you down just so some people can live off of you.
Did you want
Yes, if I may.
to follow up?
If I may. So I think Mo just covered like chapters 3, 5, 7, 8, 10. And that's the beauty of this document that we've done together. Because as a speaker, he's dynamic and truthful and deep and impassioned. As a writer, and not everybody can do both, obviously. I'm still trying to learn how to do both well. But as a writer, he is a really good writer. He writes with clarity. He writes with purpose. He writes on topical things as they occur to him. And he's got a wise editor at the Post that has lent him the page probably a couple dozen times. Some of y'all didn't know that. Probably heard him speak a bunch of times, but this guy's a prolific op-ed writer. So when he came to me to write the book with him, I said, this is a good idea, because this guy can get in front of a room and talk, but his thoughts are organized, and we've put them into a book that people can go chapter by chapter. And I have conversations every day, and it comes up, and I said, well, that's chapter 1, Grand Theft Auto. Kids are still playing violent games. But to the point that we started on here, and I believe you chose that from the chapter on numbers, if I'm not mistaken, statistics. Because as with schools, as with housing, the police also aggregate numbers. Overall crime is down, Overall crime is down, but murders are up 38%. But no, it's okay. Overall crime is down. Okay? And so that isn't a way of massaging numbers. The question I ask is, would you rather be safe or feel safe? Okay? People in neighborhoods that are plagued by crime perennially, they know they're not safe. Try to make them feel safe is not going to cut it. And people whose neighborhoods have not had crime visited upon them with any frequency, they want to be told that they should feel safe. But I think that we have crossed over into this place where communities in our city, it's become unpredictable. And that people not only don't feel safe, they aren't safe.
I want to get to a broader question, and then maybe some of you want to have some questions of your own. I don't want to interfere with your agenda. I do want to take this moment, though, to acknowledge someone in this room who probably matches or exceeds my knowledge of the city in a real substantive way. Because we're present at the creation, of Home Rule, before and every step of the way. And he chronicled those steps every step of the way. Nelson Remsnyder. That's right. And be careful, be safe. And as I said that same thing once to another person in this audience, but I said, Dorothy, don't die. And I said that to Dorothy Brazil because of the work she did. And she also flies without a net. And she's been doing it for a long time. And I keep saying, Dorothy, don't die, because we need your work. And Dorothy is coming back, as she promised, with her work. She's been away for a bit. She's going to come back with her work. Let me just throw out this one question, get to you out there. Mo, you and Jeff write about the same metaphor, rehabilitation and redevelopment. Mo, you talk about how to build up people so that they can take control of their own lives and their future. That's what you're talking about. And I'm going to ask you to answer that question. How well or how badly is the city doing that? Jeff, you say the same thing about reconstruction and development. The need to take care of fallow and blighted properties scattered across the city. How well and how badly you think the city is doing? You have here in the audience the new DC Attorney General who has that area in his resume. You have Councilmember Truman. I want you to answer that question for everybody and answer that question, how well and how badly, for the public officials who are here. Take it off.
So I'll say this. I'll go back to 1996 when I started with Ceasefire Don't Smoke the Brothers and Sisters, and we were protesting in the middle of the street when the control board took over our city, took our trades out of our schools, took our music out of our schools, which was a direct attack on the black middle class in Washington, D.C., because that's how we thrive. We had a very successful young group of people who everybody wanted to get one of those trades. Everybody, the attack on the business owners in D.C. at that time, where they attacked the black cab drivers and made it so, put a moratorium on that. They put a moratorium on black street vendors. Everything that we did in this city right, they destroyed it. So let's go back to that. Fast forward, attack on our music and culture. They stopped places where young people can go and have activities. So everything that we enjoyed coming up, young people stopped being able to have the opportunity to be young people. They didn't have no venues to go to. You know, we talk about the pretty schools. We got a lot of pretty schools. But when we had the regular schools, every day you went to Ballou, something was going on. Every day you went to Malcolm X, something was going on. Every day you went to Number 11 Boys Club. Every day you went to Bruce Monroe. So those are some of the things that were taken away that started this, right? Then you had a mayor that came in who did a lot of great things, Anthony Williams. But the problem with Anthony Williams was, I don't think he really understood totally that while you're building this great city up, you got to build the people up who were here when nobody wanted to be here simultaneously, right? So now you fast forward past that, and we have people fighting to stay here. You have people who are not being educated, and this goes back like decades. This just didn't start, right? People who are not being educated, and a bulldozer of gentrification that started off 2 miles an hour that's going 100 miles an hour. So it's like the city, to me, is trying to throw money into a pit that's burning so fast, or a bulldozer that's going so fast, it can't even catch up with the good things it's doing. Program-wise, I think some of the programs are good, but I think some of them are horrible and can be better. Just keeping it frank. You know, when Peace of Heartless did the work, like anywhere you go in the city, they trying to reduplicate what we did. And that's facts, wherever you go. In every meeting they talk about, how do we do what? What do y'all hear where y'all go? Those from the other side of the river. Pizza Hall, am I right or wrong? Everywhere that I go, what do they say they need to bring back? Right? But they don't have to bring the Pizza Hallers back. You got people like Ye Me, Maurice Majid, who does the Pathway program, and it's a great program, and he just needs to be able to fly his wings like I had the opportunity to. And we can change some of those things. But the problem is, we have gatekeepers and people who get in the way of people like him flying, who can bring those great programs, right? And the other thing is, I'm gonna close with this. What people hate to do in this city is what me and Jeff do. Sometimes we argue, sometimes we don't agree, right? You know our story before this book. Jeff wrote stories about me. I wrote stuff back, right? But guess what? I know his heart is pure. He knows my heart is pure. And that's what we don't have right now, y'all. We extremists. It's either you all the way on this side or you all the way on that side, right? So we can't have enough good friction with people who have good hearts to make a diamond. So what we just had happen in the city with Congress and the Senate about to do what they doing, I could have told you that bill wasn't going nowhere and what was going to happen. I could have told you that. Now, I don't agree with them coming and stepping on our toes. I totally disagree with that. But on a side note, I had women coming to me and saying that they have a problem. They have a problem with a bill. I'm not even talking about carjacking and stuff, that if somebody rapes me, they will get the same sentence across the board. These were white women in Ward 6 who were adamant, and I'm guarantee you, they were the ones that were flooding the lines downtown in Congress and the Senate. Trust what I tell you, because they were adamant about this. So it ain't just about the carjacking and all the stuff you see on the news. It's about a lot of stuff. And the stuff like that where people in this city don't listen to us. I wrote an op-ed in the book about marijuana. And I went to the guy who lived up there by American University, who was getting all the money to advocate for it, the white guy up there, Adam, what's his name? You know what I'm talking about, with the little funny hats, right? Right, who made it seem like they were here to save black people and stop us from getting incarcerated. And I said, put an education component in it and make sure black people are able to make some money off of it. Because every time y'all come with one of these rules and one of these things to save us, it seems like somebody else make money off of it. We don't. Right? So I'm gonna close with this, Kobe. So what happened was they fast forwarded, right? All these young people on weed now in our city, right? Can't afford it. Half of you get robbed on those to support a habit. They gone from weed to fentanyl, right? And guess what? Ain't nobody black making money off of it. More people have gotten locked up since the bill passed off of getting locked up for marijuana than before. So tell me how that bill saved us. And these are the things that keep happening with people passing laws in our community who don't listen to us and have a direct effect on our life.
Ron, let me tell you. Reminds me situation in my church. Pastor was talking about sin. And he said, all y'all been out there against the rules. He seen it. Get out of here. Sister said, that's right. Go on, Lord. Preach it, preach it. And all you all have been, he hearing it. Get out of here. Tell him, preach it. Tell him, preach it. And you all also have been seeing it. Y'all get out of here. Yeah, that's good. And y'all who've been mean it. Said, oh, Lord. You stop preaching and going to meddling. Ron, you stop preaching and going to meddling when you started talking about who's getting the money for the marijuana stuff.
I'm just talking about equity, that's all. Equity deal, when you have equity, it deals with crime, that's all.
All right, you're right. I just want to get to this other thing, this metaphor. You've done it. I want you to also touch on it again a little bit more.
What's that?
The metaphor, building up, and why it's not happening. And I want that message to deliver to the audience here and to the public officials. Why are these things not happening? We'll start where we started out, the rehabilitation of the fallow property
You want?
and people's lives.
Well, It's easy as a reporter to focus on departments and agencies and find problems and report on them. And, you know, what I told a group at Busboys and Poets a couple of weeks ago over in Anacostia was, you know, the government is not coming to save your community. And, you know, I have to be careful about how I talk about these things, but one of the things I love about this book is Ron is speaking. He's speaking to his own community, and he's speaking in really tough terms. He doesn't really care if you like what he says. He tells you what he thinks you need to hear. And some of the things that are in this book, to come back to the book, are an answer to your question. Do you think a child can be rehabilitated with an ankle bracelet sitting in a house playing Grand Theft Auto all day? You know? There's got to be a better system for handling a youth, a 14-year-old, 15-year-old, 16-year-old. Forget about the crime bill. There's got to be some sort of way to get into that young person's lives. And I don't know if we figured that out. But also in this book, Ron starts to talk about community and legacy and the lessons that he learned. And he's had an up and down path, as Colby said. But one of the things that he came back to repeatedly in this book is his own legacy, your all's legacy. The civil rights struggle, black excellence on U Street, passing those lessons on down the generation. And he takes a fairly holistic approach to talking about how communities can come together and help each other along, how the elders in the community can re-engage with the younger people in the community, how the younger people in the community can learn those lessons and engage at their level. This is called A Vision of an Urban Scholar, Turning Words into Action. This book is an action. This is a document we created with action. But he has advice for action that can be taken. And I find that valuable. It's not for me to give advice, but in channeling his words, there's powerful messages here about learning the history, honoring the elders, bonding together in the community, helping people out, and then trying to recruit youth to buy into that so that they can be leaders in their own level of society and try to find those leaders and grow from there.
I agree with all of that, but I quibble with one thing, a serious quibble.
That would be a disagreement.
Mo isn't talking to his community.
Oh, you know, you're right.
Mo is talking to our community.
Right,
Our
right.
community,
I
across this city.
I cut
And-
myself short on that.
Well, let me
Please,
stay on this because
please.
it's so important to understand. That's why I'm talking about this book. You read this book, you read about us, all of us,
That's right.
all of us, all parts of this city. What we have here is what we created. What
That's
we
right.
created. From Ward 3 to Ward 8. This is ours. We own this. We own this.
Yes, sir.
We own this as much as we own what happened on Connecticut Avenue up there at Subway, as what happened on Good Hope Road. We own all of that. And that's the way we have to respond to these problems. That's the way we have to respond to these issues. Sure, go to Anacostia, you'll hear them pour out their hearts. Hell, go up Connecticut Avenue, and you'll hear them pour out their hearts. Some about the same things. Some of the same issues. And that's the approach that needs to be taken. I don't want to get on the soapbox. I'm here as a moderator.
I would, Colby,
So I'm gonna do that. And I'm gonna ask if I may, if there are any questions here. Dorothy, you have something? Okay, Dorothy, not, any questions? Back there, ma'am.
Good afternoon. I'm 6 generations Washington home. I live on Connecticut Avenue. It's not the same. I beg to differ. I came from Ward 8. I know Ron. I lived in Wellington Park. He helped it, he helped it, he helped it, he helped. I just moved off of Butler Street. They shot my son 15 times. It didn't matter. He's living. I have a bonus son that was killed in Wellington Park. This is his K. No one cared. So when you say Connecticut Avenue, they shut Connecticut Avenue down. They said cancers. That school, Burke Elementary, wasn't open.
Say that again.
It wasn't open. So when the child was hurt, the shooting, that school was shut down. The children go back to school the next day to Stanton. They go back the next day to Anacostia, they go back the next day in Baloo. When I walk these streets, they look at me very indifferent. Excuse me, wait, daughter. They look at us very indifferent.
I know they do.
One
Look,
second.
I know that.
I got the floor 1 second. I respected you. You said it's the same thing. No, sir. In wards 1, 2, and 3, it's special. Now in 4, 5, 6, and 7, it's not special. So they called out because now they're here. No, it's not racist. We've been here. So it's racist because they come here and they want action. And they get it. We've been here. And we don't get any action. So no funny. If their son gets shot up here 15 times, they gonna shut it down. Believe that. My son was shot, he wasn't shut down. I see police officers, I see park police, they just ride all day. It's police presence from 7 in the morning to 11 at night. That police presence isn't in our community, and our police chief says, we can't do nothing, we can't do nothing. Yes, you can. You pull Park in, get them out of Rock Creek Park, put them in. In the 80s and the 90s, Sheriff Road, they pulled in the Army. They pulled people in to pull down the crime. The police need to not be in their car. I don't know, youngin. Get out your car. Excuse me, people. I need you to walk. We need them in Ward 8. We need them in Congress Park. We need them outside the car. We need them outside the car, sir. We're paying them. We pay them. They don't get out the car. I'm sorry, Ron. I
No,
love you.
but-
I don't care about no
but-
welfare. I don't care about no food stamps. Some people need it. Some people don't.
You're-
There's people that came here, sir. They get them. I'm in the line with them. I'm watching them. They not my color. They ain't never need no food stamps because they didn't want us to have any. That's it right there. My name is Tamika Creek. I'm gonna wait for you.
And I heard your testimony.
I'm gonna wait for you
Okay,
to say
okay, but
no,
let-
sir, I can't give it to you. I'm gonna be honest.
Come on, baby, listen to him.
Okay,
I'm
but
gonna listen to
listen.
you, but I can't give
Listen.
it to you.
you go ahead. Okay, here's what I'm saying.
It's not fair.
This is our problem. It's not, it is the city's problem. It's not Ward 8's problem. It's not Ward 7's problem. That is my point. It's not Ward 7's problem. And if we don't take that attitude, we're gonna have a continuation of this. And I'm speaking to the public officials.
Can I say something, Kobe? Baby, listen. We listening to you, and we heard you. And I want to, listen, don't go nowhere, listen. I want to tell you why your voice is so important. So I talk to a lot of people, and we have good conversations. That's why I talk about this dialogue. It's not about turning each other down, what I think is better than what you think. It's about hearing everybody's voice. I was on the phone with the AG, Mr. Swab, this morning. We were talking, because he wants to hear what he can do, right? And he said he was in Ward 8 with Ms. Pinto yesterday. Well, his staff was there. And some people said the direct opposite of what you said. Let me finish. No, so I hear what you hear. I hear people saying they want the police in Ward 8, right? They want more than the police, but they want police presence. But when his people went there in a totally different meeting, guess what? They said the direct opposite. And that's why it's good for us to have these conversations.
And I heard what you said yesterday too, because I watched it. I watched it. Yes, I did. 2 days ago?
No, sir.
No?
No, sir.
I heard your voice.
I'm very upset, so it definitely wasn't.
I heard your voice.
Because I went from rapid rehousing, then I came back and I was homeless. Guess what? I'm 7 years. This year I'm celebrating bladder cancer survivor. I don't even have a bladder. No one cared. They didn't give me no housing. Virginia Williams carried me. Rapid rehousing carried me. I had to talk. Linda Harper Hooper carried me. All of them carried me. They can't carry me. I have my own voice. I'll stand on any corner with him, with Presto, all of them. I be in DMs. I love Ward 8. I'm a product of Ward 4. I'm a Petworth community. I love Uptown. But I'm going to go to Northeast, Southwest, Southeast. Not fighting, but I understand and I see it. And I'm not going to pull a blind eye. And I'm not racist. But I'm not going to pull a blind eye. And it's not fair. It's not fair. They really don't care. They'll fake like they care. They don't care.
Who doesn't care? Who doesn't care?
They looking funny,
Who doesn't
but
care?
I don't count, their skin. I'm sorry.
Let me, can I say something to that?
They looking
Let me, let me say this, y'all. Let me say
They
this.
don't want us to this,
Sister.
What's this up here, Wisconsin that just gave us with the W?
Yeah.
They don't want us in Wegmans.
Let me say this.
But they got the same food stamp card I got.
Let
They in Wegmans.
me say this. There's a lot of institutionalized racism in this world and in our city, right?
Yes.
That's clear. But I'm gonna say this, and If anybody don't get something from me, get this from me. What I do is, and what I've always done, is fight for my people. Whether I get tore down or not, they can't stop me. But the most important thing I've learned from studying with people who work with Martin Luther King, people like Presto, my daughter back there who went on civil rights tours with us. We took hundreds and hundreds of children down there, and they came back and changed their lives on our civil rights tours, which I also talk about in the book. I learned, one, that there are good people everywhere. And what I learned to do is find those good people and work with them. And I'll give you a prime example. When I started working with Checker Colbert, DC Democrats didn't help me. Black people who I helped didn't help me, majority, other than a few people like Scotty Irvin, Sinclair Skinner, who this city tore down, and a few other people. You know who helped me the most? Jimmy Kemp, Jack Kemp's son, a Republican. That's who helped me with some gay children. I'm gonna say that again. A Republican helped Ronald Moulton with gay children who were willing to help themselves. So what I'm saying is, and I teach my people that, don't get caught up on all that. Find good people wherever they at because they exist everywhere. And don't let bad people stop your progress. And I've learned this because when I traveled down south and they taught me how they won by having a moral compass and being relentless. They won by finding good people no matter where they were at. And when I say moral compass, that doesn't mean if you see a young person pull a gun out, right? And the police shoot them and you're in front of the precinct protesting when you know that youngin was dead wrong. Now, when a youngin is dead right, you're supposed to be turning the streets up. But it's a lot of times in our community when we wrong too, Kobe, and we don't call it out, we don't call for parents to be responsible. Everything is the government. We know this government is reckless in many ways. But if we lose our moral compass as people, we cannot hold other people accountable. And that's what we have to do in this city. It doesn't matter whether you're black or white. Good people have to come together and deal with this state of emergency because you can't run away from it. I don't care what color, how much money you make. Right now, the good thing about this, these issues have brought us together. And 99.9% of the people in this room want to do what's right and have a good heart.
And that's why I say it's our problem, not their problem.
Could
It's
I-
our problem. Ma'am, you back there?
Exactly.
That's one thing I think we do, we fail at mostly. We don't offer a pathway for our youth to go to, so therefore they go to the street. Because that's the pathway. That's something that they could do, that they could make money. But if you go and take them to mechanics, then they can go in the summertime to a mechanic shop and say, hey, I know I'm not old enough, but I know how to do this. I was certified in school to do this, so can I help work in your shop? Because I want to become better. But you can't become better if there's nowhere to start. That's one main thing that I do.
God bless thee, the Dunbar, our radiant star, like the sun of the morning, illumining far. I too am Dunbar. I bleed Dunbar. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, I would like to build on what he said about our education system. I used to be a high school teacher, and that's where it started. When I started teaching, I got the class with the children that were written off in the school. And that first day, I got home, I slept from the end of the school day till the following morning. But I went in to see the principal and told her that some of these children, their they're not dumb. Some has dyslexia, some have different learning disabilities that they learn at different levels. And the school had nothing to address that. So I think that in our institutions, that is where the children are being failed, because there's not enough evaluation of the children at different levels. Or you're down, you're with this crowd, and you're hopeless, and the school gives up on some children.
And
So I just wanted to build on what you
And I'm
said.
a product of that. I work for a very prestigious daycare in DC, one of the #1 daycares. But because I was able to teach a toddler who just came from the doctors and said, oh, she's not going to be able to walk a little bit because her legs are underdeveloped, the mother's crying. And I'm like, but she crawls, and she crawls fast. What do you mean? It took me 2 hours to teach that one child how to crawl. Walk, and she never crawled again. I mean, it's just, again, deciding how to work with a child and not just saying, oh, well, they said that.
It's called culture competence.
There you go.
The gentleman sitting right there.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening. I come to you with love. And listen to, I can hear the anger and the frustration of everyone. And what I have to offer you is the program that we have now that we're starting. It's called BOG. It's called Bible Over Guns. And I'd like to introduce that program to you because of the anger, we have to change the way we look at things. Because the things we look at won't change. And one of the reasons that the anger is there is because we as a people, as humans, we have gone into what is called beast mode. And that beast mode is the principle that God teaches, that when you don't seek him, you have to seek God. And when you don't seek God, you go into beast mode. And we would like to offer you Bible over guns because of the principles that the Bible teaches. And it's not trying to proselytize anyone. It's to bring God into the picture of our Creator. Whatever God you serve, the God that I serve is the God of the Bible. But whatever God you serve, he is your Creator, whether you know him or not. Every breath you take comes from him. And we have to go back to the moral standards of the Creator and who we are as a people. And when we understand who we are and the reason God brought us and created us is to be a loving people. And that's why I'm coming with you with love. So we have to calm down and think so that we can get out of beast mode and go back to a civilized people. And that's what I want to offer you, Bob.
Cole,
Thank you very much.
can I say something to that?
Yeah.
One of the things that any of us would notice that have been in Washington, D.C. is that we are spiritually dead in this city. Most people don't go to the church. Most people don't go to the mosque. Most people, we're spiritually dead. And to his point, I believe that it's very important for us to have some type of spiritual connection. And what we did with Baloo, one of the reasons why Peace of Hearts was successful, we found a way to do it our way. We were one of probably the only organizations that can fight with government and still get funding, right? It created a lot of enemies and probably caused our demise in the end. But sending 160 children to college, broken 40 truces, and doing a lot of things that we did, I'd take that any day for an 8-year period because the effect that we had. But in Baloo Senior High School, they said they took prayer out of school, right? So we figured out a way to put it back into school. Yeah. Reverend Tony Lee, who's my reverend at Community Hope Church, we got with Reverend Tony Lee, and we would feed the young people before school. You could do it before school or after school. You couldn't do it during school. These are how they did this stuff in the civil rights. They would figure out a way. So we would have prayer and breakfast in the morning, right, and a conversation. Have Big G and people like that in there with us, right? Guess what? The children who never came to school was there 8 in the morning to get a breakfast and have a conversation. right? So it's a way strategically to do everything. Then I want to, one of my mentors, Dr. Deborah Everson, who used to be one of the master educators, Vera White, when we first started in Ballou, it was she that empowered us when we took over the hallways.
Could she stand?
She might not understand, but when we took over the hallways in Ballou Senior High School, they let us return citizens come in because nobody wanted to go in Ballou. Everybody was scared. We took the hallways back. I saw the Ballou marching band in the school, and they were one of the only things happening. When Anthony Williams had that press conference outside the school, went to Dr. Evans, they performed, Courtney Malloy wrote the article about Ballou, and that's what brought marching bands back into DC public schools. That right there. From that, it brought a spirit back to Ballou that we had Ballou pride. From that, you end up getting a new Ballou school. I go on and on and on of things that happen because of people like her who gave people like me a chance, right, to show our strength, to use our power, to use our strength, even though we might not have had the degrees. And if we can do these things, we did it with MPD at Ballou, Officer Buckner, the Chief Diane Grooms. So when you talk about safe passage, we were doing safe passage without somebody telling us to do it. It's common sense. If children are fighting leaving school, right, it's common sense that you got to make sure they get home safe. So what did we do? We had people riding the buses, just ride on the buses. We didn't need Metro to ride them, we rode them, right? If the route was always a fight, we would leave with the Ballou students, ride the bus, ride in our cars, and if it was a fight, we would let Buckner know who was fighting, pull them out of the classroom in the morning, and we would mediate it. Nobody got suspended. And then if they got suspended, guess who ran the suspension, in-school suspension? Pieceaholics. And guess what we taught them? We taught them about their history. We told them that people died for them to get an education. And that it's irresponsible for you not to come to school and take advantage of your education. I didn't give excuses. I didn't sit there and say because your mother don't have food on the table or because you're poor. You know what I mean? Poor black people did well in the city. You look at one of my friends right there who's a millionaire. He's a cardiovascular surgeon, and we were gang members in this city when I came up with the Gangster Chronicles. And he's a multi-millionaire and put himself through college. And about to have a docu-series come out on him. I don't buy into that. I don't dumb my children down. We showed them a way, we empowered them, and we lift them up. And we got to stop this because guess what? We got 3 to 4 years in D.C. to save what looks like Chocolate City. I'm telling you real. We got 3 to 4 years. And with the tax revenues going down downtown every year, these social programs are about to get cut. So we don't start teaching people how to do for self. If we don't start teaching people that you got to take your butt back to work and work your way up in a market where it's going to be easy for you to work your way up because don't nobody want to work. We got to be frank and real and create opportunities and hold people accountable in these agencies where they're not working out, where they're not doing what they're supposed to do. We got to stand against them. And then the people who want to do what's right, we got to stay with them. We got to stand with them. What happened to me should have never happened to me. I can tell you other people who do the same work I do, and now they come to me, Mo, this stuff is crazy. I said, what you mean? Man, they coming after me like they come after you, and all I did was help people. It's the same thing. It's happened to every single black leader in our country. Anybody who's been serious, who's willing to take a stand and stand for the people, and it works, they destroy it.
Okay. That said, it comes back to the question. What do you do about it? What do you do about it? Because those things are happening with a government, by a government and with a government. A government witnesses this. A government oversees this. A government in the council, a government in the mayor's office, a government in those agencies, they're there. The outcome that Mo is talking about can be avoided if our government changes and changes the way it's doing things. That's the message to us, but also to the government. So there was another question back. Yes, sir.
Mo, so right now, what are the strengths and weaknesses of the
deterrent violence and justice programs they have going on now in DC?
That's a good question.
So I'll tell you this. First of all, I think it happened too fast. You can't make 1 million good people overnight. Sorry. Everybody don't know how to work with this population, even though you're from the population. When we started the work that we were doing, we were already doing it for 9 years. So I had 9 years of on-the-ground training. It wasn't like I just learned all this stuff overnight. I learned how to deal with the system. I learned how to deal with people in the street. I learned how to have frank. See, some of the conversations Ron Moten had, that people that's doing this work ain't gonna have. They're not gonna have a conversation about what's snitching and what's not. See, I don't care what nobody think about me. So I'm gonna have that conversation with my peers. I had to have that conversation. When I had that conversation, I had to go talk to real kingmakers in prison and tell them why I felt that way, because they be like, what you doing, dude? And I had to explain to them, if you're not in the streets, the code don't apply to you. If somebody's living in their house, and they're a law-abiding citizen, and they see something going on outside their house, they have every right to call the police. Especially since the streets don't have no codes no more. It was a time if a child or a woman got shot, the streets would deal with it. Now, we saw it happen, Kobe, on 22nd Street, but it don't happen that often. You know, with the old lady, who wasn't buying it, who wasn't going to let nobody carjack her, and the hood took over as they should, right? That don't happen often.
Yeah, he didn't go to jail directly, you know. He went to the hospital. Yes, sir.
How's it going? My name is Cameron Montgomery. I'm a former Black Panther, and some of the work that I like to do is to encourage people not to actually engage people to get paid to do the work they do. But what you did, where you talk about doing the work for free and kind of just your own self-sustaining effort. I had a conversation with Mr. Presto and I asked about what does it take to encourage the men of Good Hope and Ward 8, Ward 7, East of the River to stand up, donate their time for free to men in this room, whether you're white, black, Puerto Rican, Asian, whatever your race, your demographic, what you believe in, to just come out and give your time. Some of the things that we have problems with is get things pushed across, hold people accountable, but you don't gotta get paid to hold somebody accountable. We do this stuff for free. We recommend and how did you get through that time doing it one for free and just sustaining yourself, and how could you encourage the other men in here to do it for free to make sure that we sustain the lives of these kids?
I would say this. I would say it's a such thing called balance. I would never do everything for free again because nobody appreciated it. Nobody appreciated it. I got dogged out in the media. I got dogged out everywhere. My children suffered. I was heating water up in a microwave. I mean, I could give you stories about what I went through doing everything for free, right? You do things from the heart and you help your people when you can for free, but you got to take care of yourself and your family, and you should never be ashamed to do that, because if a man can't take care of his family, he damn sure can't take care of nobody else. So I would never in my life tell somebody in this city to do something for free when other people are getting tons of money, right, to solve problems that they can't solve. And then, you know, they always criminalize us when we start an organization program. But we see all the mom and pop organizations that started in Ward 1, right? They grew, they blew up, they sold their property, then they went to Ward 8, bought all the property, blew up, pushed out all the small nonprofits. They sound like Amazon to me, don't it? But it's okay when they do it. But when we do it and we blow up from the ground up, somebody always looking for something we did wrong. They would chase us down until we die, trying to find something wrong. No matter how many people stamp us, no matter how many people say we saved their life, they would chase us down to the day we die. To the day we die, trying to find something wrong.
And still the money flows.
Yes.
Still the money flows, and that's where citizens come in. The money is flowing. Maybe going to the wrong places, but the money is flowing. You have a voice in where the money goes. You have a voice in that. You got to use it. And you have a vote in that. And you got to use that too. Right, ma'am, you were right. You had your hand up. Do you what? You have a question?
I just had a comment. I did some work at Ballou because Ballou had the most fabulous librarian and was looking for books because she had fewer books than she had students. And so this call went out across the city, and all of us looked at all of our overflowing bookcases and all of our kids' stuff and started
Yes.
And what I think is so critical is our children learning our history. I went there to talk about statehood and the history of the District of Columbia and the history of race and why we're still here after 220-some years as colonists. And the second session that I went back to, I brought a copy of a book I just read called Freedom Summer about Mississippi in, what was it, 1962, 4? And I got a copy for everybody in the class. There were only like 6 or 8 people. And I gave it to one of the female students who were sitting there while we were waiting for the teacher to come. And she started reading the first couple of pages, and her eyes just got so big. And I said, you should read this. This is about people, about black people who had nothing, who had no income, who nothing but put their lives on the line to make this world better, to get the right to vote, to do all kinds of things. And I think we need to be teaching our children, black, white, everybody, about this kind of thing.
Well-
because it tells them what they can become, and that it's not that they are nothing. They could be incredible people because they have a lot of people they've never heard of who have shown them the way.
I guarantee you, 95% of the children in Washington, D.C. do not know it's Bloody Sunday today.
Yeah.
But I can tell you, we took thousands of children on civil rights tours where they met people who used to be with Martin Luther King, Amelia Bolton Robinson, Annie Lee Cooper, James Bevel, Reverend Boone, Reverend Orange. They met all these leaders who worked with King, who were the brainstorm, and we don't fund stuff like that. We don't, but I'm just telling you, and when we created, people like us created organically, people steal our stuff and then come back and try to sell it to us. Instead of empowering us to do miraculous work that we were doing. So everybody know that was working. I can get youngin' after youngin' after youngin' who are adults now who will come and tell you how their experience changed their life, right? But it costs money to do that. It costs to do that. How many people really willing to do it? So you're right, the history, if you don't know your history, and that's one of the things that most African Americans out of everybody, our children don't have their history. So they have nothing to be proud of. If it's not taught down, they don't have what other people have. So it's easy for us to kill each other. Because the love that others have for each other, the love to support each other, is not there. And then we have to fight to keep it in schools. We got to fight for us to still be educated about it.
Question back.
And that's in the book too.
And we need to fight.
I have to agree with her. I was expelled from DC schools when I was 4. I went to Montgomery County schools for being bad, not for being dumb. And in Montgomery County schools, DC schools, they don't teach us about us. They teach us in science that we are fishes, we are monkeys. And I like that she said that because I had white teachers. They wasn't racist. I know I said what I said, but I'm not racist. I don't have a problem with nobody. But in this community and in DC and with black people versus any other race, we have to learn, like you said, I want to piggyback what you said. We can't depend on the government. We can't look at it like what they have versus what we have. We got to look at our mothers too. Some of our mothers, they not teaching us the right way. We can't be mad that white people, and I'm going to say white people, teach their kids and want their kids to make it. If a white person was an officer, he wanted his son to do it, he going to make his son do it. If my mother say right now, go do this, I'm not going to go do it. So we can't be mad. So it got to start with the students, and it got to come from the parents. We have to have more meetings with people my age. I'm 23 years old. I was expelled from DC schools. I didn't want to listen. It's not always our parents, and it's not always their fault, and it's not always they don't want to help us or they're not taught things. Sorry, their parents didn't teach them how to say thank you. So when you walk in the store with a white person and you be like, oh, I like your shoe, they gonna hit you with the. They wasn't taught it. I talk to a lot of white girls that be molested by their mothers, their uncles, their fathers. Most of the time, I'm not saying that black people don't go through that. But 9 times out of 10, most of our grandfathers do not rape us in DC. And I'm just being honest. And it has to be for both of us. Both of us.
Sir.
Hi, my name is Kevin Sweet. Most, if not all, of what we're talking about is cultural tradition. And I've been working, developing my youth program for over 15 years now. This year, I'm going to get it off the ground. It's called Mentor Institute of America, where challenge. But my mentoring organization is a comprehensive mentoring organization. But this is what I want to say. I wrote a book as well. And my first quote in my book, and the book is called, my book is called The Man Reference Book. And the first quote is, communication is the key to any relationship. That's the first quote. So this is what we have to do in our community, and which we're doing right now, is communicate. So my mentor, which he doesn't know, Joe Madison, or Sirius XM, he says, what are you gonna do about it? He says everybody can do something. That's what Ron Moulton's talking about. That's what everyone who spoke in here is talking about. Everyone can do something. So we cannot only just speak, but we have to take action as well. Not just for one day, not just for 1 week, 1 month, but we have to do it continuously from the youth on up to the elders, because sometimes I mentor men older than me. So is it a challenge? Yes. We have solutions. We just have to
Hey, Kobe, can I?
Thank you. He mentioned Joe Madison. I just want to mention my wife here, Gwen, is and Joe Madison's cousin. And I am running back to Mississippi.
I was going to say that Bruce Johnson, we didn't do a moment of silence to him, who did the forward of my book, who was a mentor. One of the things that when we have a conversation, he would always say, right, okay, I hear all that. What we going to do about it? He would always stop you like, I hear all that, Mo, but listen, we had the same conversation. What are we going to do about it? So I just want to say that.
Well, 1, 2, 3, and then we'll kind of have to end it.
We forgot the sister back there. It was in the middle. Right, right
I
there.
didn't see you.
Yeah.
I didn't think you did.
I'm sorry.
Ms. Covington, I just wanted to say I appreciate this forum. I am just an average taxpaying citizen, a mother and a grandmother, and I just wanted to share with you all that I was at home listening to the news every single day. I'm not a public speaker. I'm not even an activist. I mean, this is not what I do, and I was led by the Spirit. For any of those, I'm not trying to scare anyone. And I kept sitting up there saying, oh God, I'm so sick of hearing about these deaths. Oh, no, what are we going to do? And just as well as I'm speaking, said, let me let you know this is bigger than any of us.
Amen.
And I'm sitting there like, huh? And so I was blessed with the vision of God, and hear my friend, deacon at my church, introduce it to you all just now, because I don't get up and speak. And what happened was, and so it came to me because the kids still will blog, and so the Spirit said, Bob, and I'm like, well, what's Bob? And it's the Bible over guns, and it was just constantly giving me all of these visions and stuff. And what I did was I pulled the covers over my head, and I'm like, oh no, I can't handle this. You know, this is not what I do. And so the scripture about Jonah, when he tried to hide in the well, and God revealed to me that I couldn't hide, so I took it to the deacon at the church. We took it to the church. Everybody else, and we now it's taking off so fast. It's gaining so much traction. All of the pastors and stuff we're working on this poster, like Black Lives Matter, so they looking to put on the church Bible over guns. We do have a visual website, and everything is coming out of pocket now because we don't have funding. This just really started. It's just taking off so. And then my daughter told me she has a friend who's doing a forum. Come talk, come here, network the people, share the information. And so she was the one that gave me the information about you, and so I'm here today.
Thank you.
And I'm grateful that we all are here, but we gotta let God do something, because this is bigger than all of us.
May I just say one thing? Sister, you're not average. You're not average. Sir.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I want to make a comment, kind of suggestion, and then I had a question for Mo. My name is David Bowers. I was born and raised here in Ward 3. Day job work in the affordable housing industry. But started a volunteer movement called No Murders DC back in 2000. So the suggestion I have kind of lifted up is this notion of the need to institutionalize this move to try to end murder in the city. And from asking Anthony Williams when he was mayor in the early 2000s to create a performance benchmark for every city agency related to the prevention of homicide, to a 2020 memo that members of the DC's Homicide Elimination Task Force sent to the mayor and chairman of the council, saying we need to create essentially a peace room, right? A hub from which public and private sector work can be coordinated on an ongoing basis, built into the code of the city. So it's not a pilot program, it's not a surge. It engages folks from public and private sector on an ongoing basis. Kind of laid groundwork, and you can see the language even in the Gun Violence Prevention Office that was created. An article that just ran about an effort in Omaha, Nebraska, kind of captures the essence of it when you read about it. So anyway, the suggestion is this notion for us to keep pressing city leaders, both public and private sector, folks from nonprofits, for-profits, government should be working constantly. The police, fire, parks and rec, public works, it doesn't come and go, ebb and flow, depending on who the mayor or the council or the nonprofit group or the pastor is of the week, the flavor of the month, the flavor of the week. So we have to think in terms of building it into the code. For Mo, appreciate all the service you've done for over the years. Known Mo for 100 years, I think. So from when we were young. But question I have for you is, and you may have hit this before I came, because I came in the second hour, but knowing that this ward, in Ward 3, is disproportionately, folks from all backgrounds, but it's disproportionately white, disproportionately wealthy compared to the rest of the city. And to your point about what Bruce said, the notion of what can folks do. And so when you think about kind of the quote-unquote typical demographic of who's in Ward 3, from big things to small things, are there a couple of 3x5 card suggestions that you say, hey, look, when you walk out of this room, if you don't do nothing but these 2 or 3 things from your seat, either individually or in your kind of corporate walk, right, and institutions you can influence, what would you put on the hearts of folks in Ward 3 in terms of what they could do?
I would say the first thing is use your voice to listen to policy that we're trying to push. Like behind the scenes, I've helped push a lot of policy. I mean, a lot of people don't know that people met in my office at Peaceaholics with a group of returning citizens, and we decided we weren't going to be called convicts anymore. And we created the term returning citizens, and now it's used all over the world. Most people don't know that, right? So we have to come together with people on this side of the river. We need your support. I'll give you a prime example. We had a town hall with youth panel. You know what they said? We don't want vouchers. Give us a business voucher. You see what I'm saying? We got so many young people who doing what's wrong, who want to do what's right, but they don't want to be like their parents. They want to start a business. They don't want to live in poverty, but they can't start a business. Help these young people, mentor them, get with us to help them start a business, right? Young people who are getting put out of school. Give them to people like me when I was 35 and 40 years old. I'm 53 now. I'm not going to do what I was doing at 35. Sorry. Won't get another 20 years of my life doing that. But people who are 35, 40, who ready to do that work, empower them to do what I was doing. Does that mean every returned citizen to come home and say, I got an S on my chest and I'm ready to do this work as the people we call to do the work? No. The other thing is when we did the work, it was a balance. People don't know how important women were to the Peaceaholics movement. I knew because I studied the civil rights movement. And I knew the numbers. Most of these boys are raised by women. So if they don't listen to me, a woman can get them to listen to me, then they can send them back to the man and do the man's work. So we work together as a team to strengthen each other's weaknesses, and those type of collaborations have to be empowered. The other thing, people in my community, when they speak up, they get their heads torn off. And nobody's there to have our backs when we tell the truth. So if you want people to stand up for what's right. We got to stop letting these national narratives, some of them have ghost money, tear down good people when they stand up. When we talk about DYRS, it was a great thing, still a great thing, criminal justice reform. But I was there in the very beginning, COVID, when you was writing about it. And I was telling people, along with these children's parents, young people who did not need to be released because we knew what was going on. Instead of protecting the young people and letting us nurture them and deal with the issues, they put them back in the street. Case and scenario, Marcel Murray. We told Vinny Schiraldi, who's praised around the world, not to release him. What was going on? They released him, 4 bodies. He was killed, 1 or 2 people thrown down the Suitland Parkway. I can fast forward all the way up to today, David.
Yeah,
A lot of the young people, I'm gonna stop with this. A lot of the young people getting killed. We can't talk about their records, but they got ankle braces on. They got charges. One of the young people who just tried to rob somebody we was just talking about had 3 robbery charges. Why is he on the street? When I say why is he on the street, why is he on the street with no plan? Because when we had the work that we were doing, we were knocking on their doors at nighttime to make sure they were in the house. That's not going on now.
But he was on the streets under the supervision of the Department of Rehabilitation Services. Not only did he go after a grandmother who was on her way to chemotherapy, if he had been where he was supposed to be and not on the streets, he would have been killed. He would have been killed. Lucky enough for him, the police came and took him away. That's the consequences. He was going to pay a price too. He would have been better off under supervision. He would have been better off in detention, getting services, than putting him under the supervision and then letting him go on the streets to put himself in further jeopardy. He jeopardized others, but put himself in further jeopardy. That's on us. I keep coming back to this because it comes back to you as to what you want your government to do and what you don't want your government to do. That's on us, every one of us.
And I think we can do that without mass incarceration.
Huh?
And I said, I think we can do that without bringing back mass, because that's what happens. People get scared to think accountability means mass incarceration.
And it doesn't.
And it does, because it saved my life.
Sir.
Hi from everybody. I'm gonna make a comment first, then I have one more question. I'm gonna make a comment first. Mr. King right here. My name is Jeff Kennedy. I was a 32-year educator, 35 years in the district government. Before I was a teacher, I was a roving leader, and I grew up in Ward 8 on Martin Luther King Avenue. So I went to Blue M. McKinley, graduates of DC Public Schools. I remember when I was working at the DC City Council for Wilhelmina Roloff, who was the chair of the committee of Judiciary, and Mr. King would write over and over again. He must have wrote about 60 editorials on DYRS.
And Vinny Schiraldi.
And he just wrote over and over, and he finally wrote one that said, you know, regardless of how many times I report this particular problem, that, you know, journalists can only do but so much. And I was reading them, and I was writing, and I was reading them, and I was also doing the work that Ron Moulton was doing years before he started doing it. I was a roving leader. And I saw everything that he just said. And Mo will tell you, I go by and consult with Mo. I go by and ask him, how you know, all the time for years. Now, I had to, in my particular situation, I had to get fired by DC Public Schools illegally. Then I had to go to Georgetown Law for 3 years, figure out, okay, what did the district do? End up winning the biggest suit for a teacher in United States history. Come back to the school system right before I could get paid from arbitration, which is supposed to be final. Got fired 2 weeks again before I could retire. Mr. King wrote the editorial that recommended me for the school board of the District of Columbia. The city council, before I was 32, recommended me on the board to run DC public schools. versus Evans case for 43 years. One of the longest cases in the United States history, to make white supremacy a part of DC policy. The District of Columbia did. And you can't say it's not true, because I just came back from England having a conference at the Royal Society of London.
All right, Jeff.
Now, Mo, and Mo will tell you, say, when you the people in England, and I had to go all the way over to find out, where'd you get these wrong-headed policies in the District of Columbia from? And we could talk about, and we can identify them. When you brought in Michelle Rhee and you illegally fired all the black teachers.
All right, go ahead now.
So, what I want you to really talk about the real struggles when you were out there, me and you was out there, not after everything had gone on, what you had to do to get back to just this point where you could do the work of helping the children. Because most of the kids that I taught that was on the way to college, he saved them from being suspended in DC public schools. And now they're doing well. I had a young lady call me up, tell me, Jeff, you gotta get over here, because Mo helped me get through college. I wouldn't have went to Shaw if it wasn't for Mo. So while the teachers doing the work and Mo is saving the kids that we teaching, talk about that.
So, in order to get back, like I said, I had great people working with me. A lot of them are doing great things. Angel with the Spice Suite now. Maya Shanken Robinson, who runs the whole Berry Farms project. You know, me and Jahar don't get along, but I'll never take away from the work that me and him did together. And I'll tell you all this, a lot of times you can do great things with people you don't this you really don't agree with, right? Sometimes that's the best partner to have. So I'll never take away from the work that me and him did together. And we had a lot of great people. So when the Peaceaholics was over, it was like I started from scratch, but I never stopped doing the work. And one of the things that I know, when you're going through things, helping others helps you. So while I was in pain and mad at the city for just letting me lose everything I had, I mean, I was attacked, my name was tore up and down, I never stopped doing the work. My father right here, who's been like a soldier with me, standing with me, helping me, I love you, Dad. He always inspired me. Dr. Evans always inspired me. And I had people who would say, here go $500, here go $1,000, here go $50. While I got back on my feet, I had people who motivated me, and the young people who were coming home from college and talking about, like what you were saying, they were going through school. The young people that said, it was that one thing you said who I didn't even work with. Sometimes just a kind word would take a person a long way. You think sometimes everybody needs a lot of work. Sometimes people just need a few good words. And you would meet them 10 years later and they'd be like, remember when you said that to me? So sometimes just smiling and talking to somebody can go a long way. So I just never stopped doing the work. And I ran into good people, like I told you, Jimmy Kemp, Scotty Irvins, just a lot of good people who helped me, right? And held me accountable and challenged me to do better, because I'm not perfect, right? And just acknowledging, it gave me a chance to heal, but also look in the mirror at myself and make myself a better person. The only thing I regret, right, a lot of times I, to this day, will go to government and go to people, right? They bring people from out of town on UFOs, right? And tell us how we should be doing work in DC. Prime example, it's a program in the Attorney General's office. I remember they came from Chicago. First thing they said, oh, we don't work with the police. We don't talk with the police. I'm sitting there looking, okay. Well, the work that I did, we talked to the police. We didn't snitch on nobody. But if we're gonna prevent crime and violence, how the hell are you not gonna talk to the police? We pay their salary. That don't make sense to me.
And
my tax dollars.
And this comes full circle to what I keep pounding the table about. Government, people in government. I went through this with Mo, watching it from where I was writing. And I watched what happened when Mo got in trouble with the government, when the government turned on Mo. I went through it. I watched it. And you know what it comes down? Who's in government? I watched that same Attorney General's office that went after Mo change with a different Attorney General. That's the difference. Who is going to be the Attorney General? You decide that. You decide who's going to be the Attorney General. That's the thing that opens the door to Mo. That's what you have to do. That's your decision. Mo says nobody stands behind me. He's right. He's right. Who stood up for him? Who stood up for him? You had a voice and you had a vote. You have a voice and you have a vote. It comes back to you. It's not just a matter of who you're cheering for and who you're booing. And what you're criticizing. You have a vote. You have something to say about who's running DYRS. You have something who's running employment services, running housing. You have something to say about who's voting for you. This is on you, on us. That's why I'm saying it's not here, it's we. That's why I come to that point. Sir, you right here.
So, as Mo said, for those who know like football, you have these amazing coaches, and then through those coaches, you have a lineage of other coaches. So, like, I feel like I'm one of those coaches that came through Mo's. I don't know what you want to be, the Lombardi. But when I heard what you said, bro, I thought about something. I've really been thinking of how government has become like the creators of everything we're doing, and then the people have been supporting government, right? Until we flip that back around, when the people become the creators and then the government supports us, we're not gonna really make anything really happen, right? So when I thought about it, and I talked about this yesterday, is I looked at the systems that we have, and one thing I haven't really heard a lot of, we talk about education, but I want everyone to think about the first system that everybody touches is the healthcare system. Everybody. That system is broken for us, for African Americans in the city. The education system is the second system on the such. That system is broken. The financial system is the third system that we need help from. That system is broken. And then for a lot of the brothers and sisters that I know, we go into what? The prison system. That system is broken. So it's like sometimes it's common sense. If every system that we touch is broken, then we broken. We shattered, right? So we got to get back to that. So what I heard earlier, and when everyone leaves, I want them to really think about this, because this room represents DC, right? It's a beautiful mixture of beautiful people. But when we're talking about supporting someone like a Ron Moulton or anybody else, any of us that come through that lens of all the things that he's taught us, right? When it gets to a point when things are uncomfortable, and this room, Ward 3 specifically, you all have a voice that's going to help to push what's going on. What's the real problem with the city is, it's always government, police, community, instead of community. The government is a part of the community. The police are a part of the community. We are a part of the community. So it's very easy for them to almost do a triangulation every time we have a conversation, because I can say that, listen, it's not cool at Ward 3. So I can get Ward 3 for people I know are going to vote, I know have certain contacts, and they Rolodex is thick so they can call certain people and make things happen. Where in Ward 8 we may not have that. Ward 7 you may not have that. So once we bring this city together and just look at the basic systems, it's not that hard. Basic systems, but we got to do it collectively. Because that's what I've been hearing here. Like everybody's kind of saying what they're saying, but for real, when it really comes down to it, and it's time for to have another piece of heart to it, it's time to really think about legislation that's really going to help the communities that really need it. Who's going to be quiet, and who's really going to step up and be a champion? That's what we're working with right now. And that's what bothers me the most, because this conversation is going to happen tomorrow, the next day, and the next day. And a person like Ron Moulton, because if he didn't help me, he's one of the few people who really know my story. If he didn't help me back then, I wouldn't even be here right now. But that investment that he put in brothers like me and some of the other brothers and sisters that I said the other day, it went away. So the next wave of champions for our city are now being taught how not to be lawless, or how to be lawless, should I say, instead of coming through programs like that, because guess what the city does every time? Something works, they stop it. Yeah. And then when you get that, if you have a plant, you put the seed in the plant, you water the plant, then you stop watering the plant. What the hell you think will happen to the plant?
So what you gonna do?
Common sense. Like common sense, man. We just gotta do better. So I just got to say that, Bo, because I get tired of hearing the same thing over and over, man.
part of life is being realistic. And I got to be realistic. I'm 83 years old. And I've been standing a while. If you don't mind, with your leave, I'd like to sit down.
Hey, Kobe, I was surprised you stood up. I was like, Kobe standing? You gonna stand for the next hour?
You know, I'm loving this, and it ought to go on. And I love the library. Thank you so much for doing this. Get a library card. Get a library card before you leave. If you don't, get one, because the library makes this important. We have libraries all over the city. Support the library. We wouldn't be doing this without the library. And I can't say enough about this. And this is ours. This is the part of our government that works well. It works well. It serves us well. And I want to thank you, sir.
You want to sit down, Kobe?
Thank you.
There's a few more questions over here. And can everybody make sure they sign the sign-in sheet? And for your friends.
Did you bring books to be signed?
Yes, we bought books. And for people who can't, who signed in, we email you. We have an event next week at Petworth, so you can let your friends know they can come next week who weren't able to make it today.
Library card is one of these.
Hey, Jeff, you had a question?
I just have a statement. First of all, congratulations, Mo, Mr. Anderson. I'm disrespecting you, but I know you for about 40 years, so I'm calling you Mo. I'm Jeff Dorn, Dr. Jeff Dorn. I know Mo also, and not to offset, disrespect them, but the first system that we start off with is family. And I've heard a lot of great things, a lot of great solutions here, and certainly as African Americans, I heard the word accountability. That's something that we really need to have at the forefront, accountability. Because a lot of times we just don't take it, okay? I mean, I'm gonna say something that's not very popular. We gotta focus on our nuclear family. I mean, where's the father? I mean, that's the common denominator. Almost all these problems I see, we can't depend on come on, guys. Ones who are old enough to know. I mean, they may help us here and there, but we can't depend on them. The nonprofit organization, I had a nonprofit organization myself, as you know, and I didn't last as long as you. I lasted about 7 years. It was called Motivate Me for Life. And I had to go to the operating room and operate. But we can't be completely dependent. We have to work on that first system, which is family. Yeah, we're morally, we're spiritually corrupt, and we need to get back to the Bible. But let's not forget family. That's what accountability is. Because almost every situation you see, whether it's murder on the street, stealing, robbery, including myself, okay? I lost my father when I was 10. I have 8 brothers. We went buck wild. I mean, buck wild. I feel bad for my mom. Luckily, she was in special education, and she took enough sociology and psychology to maintain her sanity. Otherwise, she was gone crazy. Ain't no way in the world she can control 8 hard-headed boys like us. We made it through. I mean, I even became relatively successful. I'm still here. I'm living, so that's pretty good. But we got to get back to the family. We got to get back to the family, and that's the common denominator. You can't just point the government, nonprofit. It's not going to be enough modes to go around with nonprofits. So that's all I want to say. That's the first system.
And to your point, in the book, we talk about only 9% of the 15 to 17-year-olds who live in impoverished areas in D.C. have a mother and father. That means 91%, 91% of the children don't have what you just talked about, where we having all the problems at.
I want to just to respond and thank a couple of the folks here that have said some things that have resonated. Colby, thank you for completing the thought as I was talking about the community role and the family role. I'm hearing that from a lot of people. But Colby's absolutely right. I didn't get the flip side, and that is the government. And one of the important things about being up here in Ward 3 is that people in Ward 3, we are all part of the same city now, and we need people to pay attention to problems in other parts of the city. So I'm talking to my fellow Caucasians and just saying, your taxes, your this, your that, your speed bumps, whatever, there's other issues that need engaged on, and I think that's really important because we're not going to get over the hump by figuring, black and white solutions. It's that side of town, this side of town. And that's a key point. And the government can't solve that either, but to Colby's point, and Tamika's point, you know, there has to be engagement to hold the government to its task. So I just want to blend those thoughts together.
Sister, how many people left? Was you and who else? You and the sister right there.
Hello, everyone. My name is Lakeisha Davis. I was born in Ward 4. I went to Howard. I graduated from Mendoza Show, but I wanted to say this to you, Ron. Frederick Douglass went to Lincoln, and Martin Luther King went to Kennedy. He had to go to the top, and they had to speak. As God told Jeremiah, speak. Don't worry about their faces. Don't worry about what they say. Just say what I tell you to say. So I believe God chose you in this season to go and speak and say what it is you need to say to make change. What I do know is no one can help us from us but us. I was raised by a single father, and I did not have my mother. And this was during 89. PBS Frontline did a special and came into my house with my dad, and it was called Throwaway People. So this documentary is in every library in all colleges around the world, right? This is the Shaw community, they say was throwaway people. But I see that you're saying, and I'm saying no, we're not. I've been working for the federal government for 27 years. I'm an EEO counselor, I'm a mediator. I travel, I spend the federal government's money, but I help small businesses win federal contracts with the federal government, right? But they call me throwaway and my dad, so I know that you're going to do great things. And I'm standing behind you, and everyone I know will stand behind you. That's clergy, police, whomever I know, they're going to know what you're doing. So thank you.
Thank you. And I'm going to take the last two questions. And then I want to thank Kobe. I don't know if he's leaving, but Kobe, I just want to thank you for being a real friend. And listen, y'all, a real friend is giving Ron Moulton your 2 cents when he needs it, right? I don't hang around people who just tell me what I want to hear. I can't get nowhere like that. So I appreciate you, Kobe. I love you and love what you've done for our city, man.
Thank you, Colby. Thank you.
All right. We'll take the last 3 questions. I'll start with this sister, Josh, and close out with the sister in the back.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sheila Carson Carr, and I am one of the co-founders of Decoding Dyslexia DC. And I just got to take a little personal side note. 8 years ago, I walked across the Pettis Bridge with my grandson, my 12-year-old grandson, and was hot. And went into the only convenience store over there. And who was in there with children from Ward 8? Mo. So he has been on that journey, showing our children about their history. Because we do have history, they just don't want us to know. Get back on track. I'm here because the gentleman said, what do you want to do about it? Because I listened to Joe Madison in the morning too. With God directing me, I got that dyslexia bill paid. Yes, you asked Mendelssohn. Okay, I'm not gonna say no more about that. But what I will say is, there was a hearing on Friday where the chancellor and Dr. Graham from RC spoke. I need y'all to write to them. I need you to tell them that the coordinator that's in the dyslexia bill, Bill 23-191, is a law that says that you have to hire at least one person to push this bill through. They let that person go last week. The thrust of the system is supposed to start in August, when you're supposed to be doing the screening, when you're starting this day, and then the next year you got to do the program and the curriculum. We have to make the government accountable, and you can do something today. You can do something now. Right, the chancellor. Right, Dr. Grant. And you know who's over the school system, right? Do y'all know who's over the school system?
Mayor.
The mayor. The mayor. Please do that. Please, for the children. Because we all know where there's an educated community, you don't have all of this. Our children are missing because a lot of them have dyslexia or reading difficulty, that if you taught phonics, if you taught the little basic stuff, they
Do something.
No, what you gonna do?
Call.
Right, the mayor, the city council, right, especially RC, especially Dr. Grant, because she's the one who's controlling this right now. We need a person now, not the person that's over, not Ross, and not another lady. They already over, teaching and learning. We need somebody directly on this. Thank you so much.
All right, we
Sure.
got to.
I want to respond real quick. I thank you for saying that because one of the things that Chairman Mendelson will say when you're talking about issues that are in the news or that I've written about is, hey, pack the chambers and then maybe we'll do something about it. I mean, I've heard him say it to me. So you're right, you're on point.
And that
with
was part of the Pizzaholics recipe. And if we couldn't get anybody, we would get young people to pack it. So it is the squeaking wheel gets what they need and what they want. And we got to do better at that, especially when it's causes that we should be making noise about. Sometimes we be squeaking about the wrong things. Johnson, them, it settles. And I hope everybody can get the book after that.
Mo, I just wanted to congratulate you on your new book. You go back a long time. I'm always a big fan of all the work that you've done. What's your message to policymakers in D.C. right now? You know, it's been all over the news with the Criminal Code Act or the bill, and right now it seems in the city everyone is in different camps. You have, you know, the mayor's camp, you have the council camp, the attorney general, you have activists. Everyone's divided. Everyone thinks they have the answers. If you could bring everyone in a room and you could be king for a day, what would be your message to get everyone on the same page?
I'll tell you this. There's a direct correlation to what you're talking about in the violence we see. So what is that? When we had Pizzaholics, all those agencies worked with us, and they didn't get along, but we made them come in the same room. And we would pinpoint young people who needed help. And those agencies will push those young people and mandate that they go to services. That's what coordination, that's what working together does. But right now, everybody's in their own lane, pointing fingers at each other, and nobody's coming together and say, look, we're going to put our differences aside, and we're going to do what we got to do to make sure these babies and adults are all right. Now, as far as policy, once again, we extremists. We either progressive extremists, which I don't even agree with the term progressive because a lot of these people are not progressives because progressives are supposed to like progress. Some of these things like pushing that code forward without really thinking it out with what we have in the House, right, and Senate, like you should have known not to push that through. That wasn't going to go anywhere. So now all the work that has been done for statehood has gone 10 years backwards because we so polarized to think it's this way or no way. So as long as we have that kind of thinking, within 5 years, now I want y'all to know this came from me because I said this, I'm going to say it again. I said it 20 times in the last 3 years. We're about to go back to mass incarceration because what's going to happen is black and white people are going to lose empathy because we couldn't do one simple thing. It's a simple word. It's called balance. It's a real simple word. BALANCE. We got to get rid of that extremism and come with some balance and common sense. It does not make common sense for a child to carjack somebody this morning and get out tonight without an assessment being done of why he did it, a plan put in place to how we're going to prevent him from doing it again, and build him and his family up to deal with whatever caused him to do it. Because some of these children are not coming from poor families. Some of these children are wannabe syndrome. They social media impacts them. TikTok impacts them. So for people to keep on saying that it's just poverty, no, it's not poverty. It's a lot of these people are not culturally competent. And then a lot of these people do not follow the people in the room who know what's going on before they do the policies. Come and listen to the people like we have elected officials here. Me and Mr. Furman don't agree on everything, but we listen to each other. He calls me to, hey, I need your advice on violence. And he listens. For years, he was coming in my community with nobody. Eric, same thing. I remember when he was with Vince Gray. Me and Vince Gray couldn't stand each other. This guy would take a conversation with me, and we would talk about it, and he still, in his own way, would try to get common sense things through. And anytime I called, he would be there. So what I'm saying is, like, we got to get rid of people who are just extremists. Neither one of them are extremists. We need people who are not extremists at the table ruling the world for us. We can no longer run a country, or locally or nationally, with people who are extremists. Progressive extremists are no different than Trump extremists. I want y'all to get this. Progressive extremists are sometimes they worse because you don't feel like, like they bad because they make you think everything is good. But some of them willing not to sit at the table and talk to people, just like the Trumpers, right? Because I know a lot of Jack Kemp Republicans. I'd take them any day over any progressive. I'm just telling you, because they empowered us to own property. They gave black women in public housing money to run their programs and take care of their own community. They didn't just talk about what black people should do, they showed them. So it's good people everywhere, progressives, real progressives, Republicans, real Republicans, but the extremism has got to get out of our politics, especially locally, because if we keep on doing it locally, the people are going to suffer. And and the last thing I'll say, we don't need career politicians. People 90 years old in office, people 80s and 70s in office, that's part of the problem. Young people's voices are not being heard because the ear is not close enough to the ground. Those people should be giving us wisdom, like the people in Alabama gave me. They used to bring me down there and sit me in their living room and dining rooms and talk to me and young people and teach us. They didn't die trying to be on top, running everything. And that's what type of politicians we got to get rid of. And the last thing I'm going to say, national narratives, I hate them. I don't care what party they come from. Because no one city is alike. No one state has the same issues. Everybody has different issues. So when you try to do a cookie cutter for every city, every state, it destroys all the good things that can happen, all the voices of the people who are there. And that's what is destroying Washington, D.C. You saw what happened with the police department. The same people in World War I who were talking about get rid of Breanne were some of the same people who were tweeting, defund the police. The same people who are saying we don't want it no more because now they are feeling the violence were some of the same people tweeting, defund the police. Facts. Same thing with the Potomac Avenue station. Some of the same politicians who were saying defund the police are the same ones that say we need police. Now, I'm not saying right or wrong. I'm just telling y'all this is like a game because you can't have one position 6 months and then when you get a little heat, you got another position 6 months later. Because if I believe in something and I know it's right, I'm going to show you how it's right with facts, not just because some people come screaming in my face. And we got to get back to facts. What you doing, Matt, you're listening. And I know what you're going to do. You're going to go back and you're going to study it and you're going to get it right. If you're not, we're going to put pressure on your ass to get it right. And last question, Ms. Settles, from Ward 7, ANC for Life. And I ain't talking about you because I know if a young person come up and want to take your place, you're going to groom them and show them the way. I know who you are. Exactly.
The thing that you
brought up about what sends us back as far as statehood is concerned. Well, you know, I'm not a supporter of statehood. I want to be candid about that. But for a really good, real reason. But if most people in the room understood what we need with statehood, you kind of sort of would maybe look at it another way yourself. And you talk a lot about common sense. I got this thing about a little bit of common sense, a whole lot of good sense, put them together, and we got something going on.
Exactly.
That's what's not going on. I think we all need to remember who the government works for. If it was not for the people, the government wouldn't have no need for it. And that's the flip script that we need to go on. We need to show them who we are.
Come on now.
That's what we need to do. I'm a rebel in the fight. I'm not fighting with no bums. I always tell my people that. I'm only fighting with people who want to be on the front line.
Come on,
and want to
sister.
talk. You understand? The government works for us. I live in public housing, and I'm being pushed around all the time because I'm going to speak. The only thing I fear is the Lord, and that's a different type of fear. But God don't need our help. He needs our cooperation. What we do for one another. How well we love one another. And I guarantee you love women all the time. What our children need and what they know is that they're angry. They're not bad, they're mad. They're not bad. And very, very confused. Why would they be? Everything that their parents and the parents before them had, they look like they're not going to have it. So you do anything. And that's what they're doing. Anything. Moore is correct when he says, let them write out. It's nothing but a real setup. What we need to do is build someplace, somewhere, that when they're arrested, it's a hotline, and we come and embrace them and have them released to us. Because nobody talks about healing from all this stuff.
Right.
I'm wounded in my own household listening to all of this horror stuff happening in the city that I'm a native to and 5 generations of. And so what do I think my children and my I have 16 grandchildren. What do I think they think? Confusion. Which way do we go?
And Ms. Sellers, to your point, I was talking to somebody who was explaining to me, you know, we know everybody in this room know we have a serious mental health problem in Washington, D.C. So, mental health illness problem in Washington, D.C. So, for instance, most people don't know if you're insured by Kaiser, which a lot of people are, they have a 2-month waiting list. A 2-month wait. How does that happen? The murder rate is up 30-something%, and one of the #1 healthcare providers is telling their patients that they supposed to help, that they gotta wait 2 months for mental health services. Then we got some people who are still getting services through a computer. They getting service to this day. Like COVID has allowed a lot of people to be lazy and to pimp the system. COVID is still here, but we got to get back to work. And the amount of people suffering from trauma in Washington, D.C., right, it's like you wouldn't believe. I was at Richard Wright this weekend, Saturday, talking to some students in a room. I was called to speak to them. And I got to talk to them about my book and about writing out your pain. And one of the little guys said, hey, I'm working on my book. And he went and showed me his phone. And he said, nobody would believe my story. And when I was reading what he's been through at a young age already, I was like, I commend you for showing up. And all of us who do this work know those stories. But the sad part of it to us is we know those children are not getting any healing. He told me that his mother don't believe in getting therapy and, you know, all those type of things. So nobody could get him in the program because mother wouldn't allow it. You see what I'm saying? So I was like, well, did you go try to talk to your teacher about this? Did you? But my point is, it's so many hurt people and young people broken to pieces, like him walking around. We got to make sure we get these young people service. I remember when we had Peace of Hearts, one of the reasons why we got in trouble, you know what type of stuff we would do? If a young person was in trauma, like in abuse in the house or something, we'd go get an apartment and put them in there. We didn't wait for housing. But guess what that's called, y'all? Y'all want to know what that's called? Misappropriating funds. You hear me? If you get money to put a fire out on this side of the street, and there's a fire on that side of the street, but you say, I can make both of them work. It's cool until somebody get mad at you. Somebody gets mad at you, and they go through your books. Guess what that's called? Misappropriating funds. So, okay.
I also want to remind us that we have a crisis intervention bus that is a bus.
Okay.
It don't make any sense, but it is, we can redirect that. Since we have it, funds are being dedicated to it, we need to turn that into the mobile.
I agree.
Crisis intervention into the mobile that will take our kids from those trouble situations when they're arrested like that, you know what I mean. And have them referred to the crisis intervention because that's where trauma starts anyway. And regardless of whether they commit the crimes or not, they commit the crimes due to a past trauma.
And trauma, I'm gonna say this, means sometimes some people have to sit down.
Yes.
And because I know people whose lives were saved by sitting down. The problem is when we sit them down, we gotta make sure they're getting services and they're not just sitting down. We gotta make sure we're healing them. So when we sat people down, right, we would come and work with them in the jail, work with them in the youth center, right? We kept on working with them so they knew we loved them. A lot of them are not getting love on the streets. Y'all know how many parents still come to me about they won't lock my child up. They just let him back out. He needs help. It happens more than you think because the mother can't do nothing with him.
And that's what Lovemore and Dr. Bruce Purnell specializes in. In my community, we have the first in the city trauma grant. It's a 3-year grant. And we do what you call sessions, taking the language away from going to therapy. We have sessions and we're on a journey, a transformational journey.
And I'm gonna close with this. The only difference between the young people we talking about and us, most of us have surrounded ourselves with people who we can talk to when we're going through something. That's the only difference. A lot of us, people do things to us that make us want to do something crazy. It happens. Might not happen every day, but it happens once a year. You know? And you pick up the phone and you call somebody and like a sponge, they absorb your pain. And they listen to you and you heal. A lot of these young people, the person they calling is telling them, go get that dog. Let's go do this. Let's go do that, right? They're not getting it. That's why therapy and counseling is so important. And I'm going to close with this one thing. When we had Peaceaholics, right? The reason why our model worked, we fought the government. Their case management was 1 to 25 or better. We refused to take a grant with DYRS under those circumstances, and ours was 1 to 5. So our counselors were like surrogate parents. So if they had a bad household, our counselor was just like a parent. So we still was getting the job done. But that costs. That costs. But it's worth it because we spend way more money per homicide, per carjacking, and everything else we see. We'll close with that. I hope everybody can get the books. If you didn't come this week, you're one of your friends, let them know we at Petworth Library. It was already planned before the stabbing. Just so you know, it's not no opportunist type thing. We had both of them planned in advance. Facts. Thank you. Thank you. I thank everybody for coming out. And thank you, Jeff. Thanks, Jeff. Thanks, Jeff.